I slept with my husband's brother for 17 years and thought my kids were safe. I used him as an ATM until he found out, executed a secret prenup clause, and left me to give birth in a homeless shelter while my parents disowned me forever. I gave birth to my fourth child on a cot in a women's shelter 6 miles from the house I used to live in. The house my husband paid for. The house I lost because I spent 17 years sleeping with his brother and thought I'd never get caught. The nurse at the shelter was kind. She held my hand and told me to breathe and didn't ask why a woman who used to drive a BMW was delivering a baby in a building with fluorescent lights and donated sheets. She didn't need to ask. The intake form had a section for how you ended up there. I wrote the truth. Divorce. Lost everything. No family support. I didn't write the rest. That I deserved it. That every night I spend on this cot is a receipt for 17 years of decisions I made knowing they were wrong and making them anyway. My name is Sienna Keller. I'm 40. I was married to Vance Keller for 17 years. He was the best man I've ever known. I say that without exaggeration. Without performance. Without the angle I usually put on things. He was genuinely, consistently, boringly, beautifully good. And I destroyed him because good wasn't enough for me. I want to tell you what I did. Not what happened to me. What I did. Because I've spent 6 months listening to people tell my story and they keep getting the framing wrong. They say I was caught. Like I'm the victim of a discovery. I wasn't caught. I was exposed. There's a difference. Caught implies bad luck. Exposed implies a structure that was built to reveal the truth. Vance didn't stumble into what I did. He engineered the moment I'd never recover from. I started sleeping with Perry the night of my wedding. I need to say that sentence without softening it because I've been softening it for 17 years. Our wedding night. June 14th. Vance fell asleep at 1 a.m. I got out of bed at 2:30. Took my phone. Went to the elevator. Rode down 2 floors. Room 614. Perry was waiting. He was the best man. He'd given a toast 5 hours earlier about how Vance was the best person he'd ever known. He said those words into a microphone. Then he waited in a hotel room for the bride to come downstairs. I went. Nobody made me. Nobody tricked me. Nobody spiked my champagne. I walked into that elevator in my bare feet with my wedding ring on my finger. I knocked on room 614 because I wanted to. Why? People ask me why. My therapist asks me why. The intake counselor at the shelter asked me why. My mother asked me why before she stopped taking my calls. The honest answer is that Vance was safe. And safe felt like a ceiling. Perry was dangerous. And dangerous felt like a door. That's it. That's the whole reason. I married the man who would never let me fall, and I spent 17 years running to the man who made falling feel like flying. It sounds poetic. It's not. It's pathological. My therapist calls it a compulsive pursuit of emotional intensity at the expense of stability. I call it what it is. I was selfish. For 17 years. Every single day. The children. I need to talk about the children because they're the part of this that I can't package or reframe or make sound less horrifying than it actually is. Kate is 16. He's Perry's biological son. Conceived 2 months after the wedding. Regan is 13. Perry's. Conceived during a week Vance was at a conference in Chicago. Jonah is 9. Perry's. Conceived on a Tuesday afternoon in Perry's apartment while Vance was at work and the older 2 were at school. All 3. Every pregnancy I told Vance was his. Every ultrasound he attended believing he was looking at his child. Every delivery room where he cut the cord and cried and called his mother to say, "It's a boy. It's a girl." Every first step. Every first word. Every time one of them said daddy and reached for him. None of it was biologically true. And I knew. Every second. Every day. For 17 years. I watched Vance coach Cade's soccer team for 6 years. Every Saturday morning. Rain or sun. Vance was there. Bought orange slices. Made lineup cards. High-fived every kid. And sitting in the stands I'd text Perry updates. Cade scored. He looks just like you when he runs. Vance thinks he gets his speed from his side of the family. I texted that. While watching my husband coach my lover's son. While eating the snacks Vance brought for the parents section. While wearing the jacket Vance bought me because the field was cold on October mornings. That's who I am. That's what I did. Every Saturday. For 6 years. The money. The title says I used him as an ATM, and that's accurate. Vance is a project manager for a commercial construction firm. Made $128,000 a year. Good benefits. 401k match. He worked 55-hour weeks minimum. Left at 6 a.m. Home by 6 p.m. Sometimes later. Always tired. Always providing. I worked part-time at a dentist's office for 3 years after Cade was born. $24,000 a year. Then I stopped. Told Vance I wanted to be a full-time mom. He said, of course. Whatever you need. Whatever I needed. He said that about everything. Whatever you need, Sienna. Like my needs were the organizing principle of his life. And I took that generosity and spent it on a man who gave me nothing except a feeling I was addicted to. Vance paid for everything. Mortgage. $2,400 a month. Cars. Insurance. Groceries. Kids' activities. Cade's braces. $5,200. Regan's glasses. Jonah's asthma medication. $340 a month. Vacations. Christmas. Birthday parties. $128,000 a year funneled into a family that wasn't his. For 17 years. I calculated it once. During one of my more self-destructive moments of honesty. $128,000 times 17 years. $2,176,000 in gross income. After taxes, roughly $1.5 million in take-home pay. Most of which went to supporting me and 3 children who belonged to his brother. $1.5 million. That's what I stole from Vance Keller. Not through a bank account. Through a lie. Perry contributed nothing. Not $1. He worked at auto body shops. Made $2,100 a month. Spent it on rent and his truck and whatever Perry spends money on. He never bought diapers. Never paid for a doctor's visit. Never handed me cash for groceries. He gave me attention. That was his currency. And I accepted it like it was worth more than the $128,000 a year that was actually keeping my children alive. The prenup. This is the part that destroyed me. Not emotionally. Legally. Financially. Permanently. When Vance and I got engaged, his father insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I thought it was insulting. Vance's father said, "It's not about trust. It's about protection. Every Keller man signs one." The prenup was 14 pages. I read maybe 3. Signed it at a lawyer's office 2 weeks before the wedding. Didn't think about it again for 17 years. There was a clause on page 11. Section 7. Paragraph C. I never read it. It said, in the event that either party is found to have engaged in infidelity during the marriage, and such infidelity results in the birth of a child who is not the biological offspring of the other party, the unfaithful party forfeits all claims to marital property, retirement assets, and spousal support. Additionally, the unfaithful party shall be liable for reimbursement of childrearing expenses for any non-biological child raised by the faithful party. Forfeits all claims. Marital property. Retirement. Spousal support. Gone. And reimbursement for childrearing expenses. For all non-biological children. Vance's father didn't put that clause in by accident. He put it in because Keller men have been signing prenups with that clause for 3 generations. His grandfather had one. His father had one. Vance has one. A family tradition of legal protection that I signed without reading because I was 23 and thought prenups were for people who didn't trust each other. Turns out they're for people who shouldn't be trusted. Vance found out through Jonah's blood test. A school medical form. Blood type mismatch. O positive plus A positive doesn't make A negative. Biology caught what 17 years of lying couldn't. He didn't confront me. He tested all 3 kids. $279 each. $837 total. 3 results. 3 zeros. Then he took 6 weeks to plan my destruction. I know now what he did during those 6 weeks. Because Shepard filed everything in the divorce discovery. Week 1. He withdrew $31,000 from our joint savings. His half. I didn't notice because I never looked at the savings account. Vance managed the money. I spent it. That was the arrangement. The arrangement of a woman who doesn't check balances because the ATM never says no. Week 2. He subpoenaed our phone records. 17 years of cell phone bills. The records showed 3,800 calls and texts to Perry's number. Some weeks 4 calls. Some weeks 7. 17 years of evidence printed on paper and organized in a binder I later saw in Shepard's office. It was 3 inches thick. My affair had a spine. Literally. Week 3. He installed a dashcam in my car. The car he paid for. In his name. The dashcam is legal in our state if the vehicle owner installs it. He didn't tell me because he didn't have to. The camera captured 3 trips to Perry's apartment in 14 days. Each one logged with GPS. Time in, 11:15 a.m. Timeout, 1:32 p.m. Average visit, 2 hours 15 minutes. While the kids were at school. While Vance was at work. While the world I'd built on lies kept spinning. Week 4. He met with Shepard twice. Reviewed the prenup. Confirmed the clause. Filed the divorce petition sealed so I wouldn't know. Week 5. He planned the dinner. Booked the restaurant. Made the guest list. 24 people. My parents. His parents. Perry. He needed Perry in the room. Not for confrontation. For proof. For the moment when a room full of witnesses watched the lie collapse. Week 6. He bought the mahogany box. Had the DNA reports printed on heavy paper. Stapled the divorce petition to the back. Wrapped it in gold paper with a ribbon. 6 weeks. While I cooked his dinner. While I kissed him goodnight. While I texted Perry on Tuesdays. While I sat across from him at breakfast and said, "How'd you sleep?" He was disassembling our marriage piece by piece and I didn't see a single bolt come loose. That's the thing about building something on lies. You're so focused on maintaining the surface that you never notice someone undermining the foundation. Vance is a construction man. He knows how structures fail. He knows which beams to remove. He took 6 weeks because that's how long it takes to demolish a building safely. Without hurting the people inside. He didn't hurt the kids. He only destroyed me. During those 6 weeks I was living my normal life. Cooking. Cleaning. Texting Perry on Tuesdays. Sleeping next to a man who knew everything and said nothing because he was building the machine that would take everything from me. The anniversary dinner. June 14th. 17 years. He handed me a mahogany box wrapped in gold paper. I thought it was jewelry. It was 3 DNA reports and a divorce petition. He said it in front of 24 people. 17 years. Since our wedding night. Room 614. None of those children are mine. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to rewind 17 years and stay in bed that night instead of getting in the elevator. But you don't get to rewind. You only get to sit in a restaurant with 24 people staring at you while your husband reads your crimes like a verdict. Perry was at the end of the table. He stood up immediately. Didn't say a word. Just walked toward the door. I watched the man I'd chosen for 17 years leave the room the same way he'd leave the rest of my life. Without looking back. Vance's mother, Marlene, was sitting across from me. She'd been mid-bite when the box opened. She set her fork down slowly. Looked at me. Looked at the DNA reports. Looked back at me. She said, "How long have you known those children weren't his?" I said, "Marlene. Please." She said, "How long?" I said, "Since each one was born." She stood up. 64 years old. Shaking. Not from weakness. From a rage so controlled it was scarier than screaming. She said, "I held each of those babies in the hospital. I bought them blankets. I kissed their foreheads and thanked God for my grandchildren. They're not my grandchildren. Are they?" I said, "Biologically, no." She said, "Don't say biologically like it's a small detail. I have been a grandmother for 16 years. You took that from me. You stole my grandchildren the same way you stole my son's marriage. By lying. Every day. For 17 years. She picked up her purse. Walked to Vance. Held his face with both hands. Kissed his forehead. Said something in his ear that I couldn't hear. Then she turned and walked out without looking at me again. Vance's father, Edgar, followed her. At the door he stopped. Turned to me. He said one sentence. "My son deserved better than you. And my grandchildren deserve to know why." Edgar. The man who insisted on the prenup. The man who wrote the clause on page 11. Standing in a restaurant doorway watching his clause do exactly what it was designed to do. My parents were there. My mother couldn't look at me. My father put $200 on the table and walked out without a word. He hasn't spoken to me since. 3 weeks later they disowned me formally. Through a lawyer. Legal letterhead. They wrote, "We raised Sienna with every advantage. She chose to repay that by exploiting a good man for 17 years and lying about the paternity of 3 children. We do not recognize her decisions as our failure. They are hers alone." My mother signed it. My father signed it. Notarized. Filed. They changed their number. The people who raised me made themselves unreachable because their daughter is unredeemable. The prenup activated. Shepard, Vance's attorney, filed the infidelity clause enforcement. DNA evidence. Phone records. 3,800 calls and texts to Perry in 17 years. Dashcam footage. I lost everything. The house. The retirement accounts. $214,000 in 401k. Spousal support. All gone. Page 11. Section 7. Paragraph C. The clause I never read. My attorney Foley looked at the prenup and said, I can't fight this. The clause is airtight. You sign voluntarily with independent counsel. Foley withdrew 2 weeks later. I couldn't pay her $4,200 in outstanding fees. The reimbursement filing came next. $340,000. For 17 years of child-rearing expenses on 3 children who aren't his. Housing. Food. Clothing. Medical. Education. $340,000. Against a woman with no job. No savings. No house. No family. Perry. The man I chose. The man I burned everything for. The man who was worth room 614 and Tuesday afternoons and 17 years of lies. Perry disappeared. Changed his number 2 weeks after the dinner. Hasn't called. Hasn't texted. Hasn't sent $1. Hasn't asked about the pregnancy. He fathered 4 children and abandoned all of them. I tried to reach Perry through his friend Todd. Todd answered. I said, I need to talk to Perry. He said, Perry told me not to give you his number. I said, I'm pregnant with his baby. Todd went quiet. Then he said, that's between you and Perry. And honestly, Sienna, after what came out at that dinner, I'm not sure anyone should be helping you reach anyone. He hung up. I tried going to Perry's apartment. The old one. He'd moved. No forwarding. The landlord said, he left last month. Didn't say where. Didn't leave a deposit return address. Perry erased himself. The same way Vance erased me from the house. The same way my parents erased me from their phone. Everyone disappearing in different directions and me standing in the middle of the debris. My friends. I had friends. I thought I had friends. After the dinner, 3 of them texted me within 48 hours. Not with sympathy. With distance. Carla, I can't be involved in this. I'm sorry. I wish you well. Danette, I sat at that dinner and watched your husband's world end. I can't pretend I didn't see it. I need space. My closest friend, a woman named Iris who I'd known since college, called me 4 days after the dinner. She said, I need to ask you something and I need the truth. Did you know all 3 kids were Perry's? I said, yes. She said, for how long? I said, from the beginning. Each time. She said, you let Vance raise 3 children that weren't his. For 16 years. 13 years. 9 years. While sleeping with his brother. And you knew the entire time. I said, yes. She said, I've defended you to people for years. When people said you were cold. When people said you didn't appreciate Vance. I said, you don't know her. She's a good person. I was wrong. She hung up. Hasn't called since. 6 months. My best friend for 15 years. Gone in 1 phone call. I had nobody. No husband. No brother-in-law. No parents. No friends. Just a sister with a pull-out couch and a baby in my stomach that nobody wanted. I moved to the shelter after Nadia's couch ran out. 3 weeks. That's how long family loyalty lasts when the family member has been lying for 17 years. Nadia tried. She fed me. Let me cry. Drove me to a prenatal appointment. But her apartment is small and her patience for my choices is smaller. She said on the last night, I love you. But I can't watch you feel sorry for yourself anymore. You did this. All of it. And until you stop framing it as something that happened to you and start owning it as something you did, I can't help you. She was right. Everyone is right. That's the worst part. There is no one in this story who is wrong about me. Mercy House. East Side. 3rd floor. Room 12. A cot. A window facing a dumpster. The baby came 3 weeks ago. A girl. 6 pounds 11 ounces born in a shelter. No husband. No family. No Perry. I named her alone. Fed her with donated formula. Dress her in second-hand clothes from the shelter's donation bin. 6 miles away, Vance is putting Jonah to bed in the house I used to live in. Reading him a story. Being the father he's been for 9 years even though biology says he doesn't have to be. I heard from Nadia that Vance repainted the bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where I slept next to him for 17 years while keeping Perry's number in a phone he never checked. He painted it a different color. Changed the furniture. Bought a new bed. Erased every trace of me from the room the way you'd strip old wallpaper. Underneath the lies there was a wall. He just needed to see it. He's also started coaching again. Jonah's baseball team. Saturday mornings. Nadia drove past the field last week and saw him there. Same energy he had with Kate's soccer. Orange slices. Lineup cards. High fives. Showing up the way he always showed up. He doesn't have to coach the son of the man who slept with his wife. But he does. Because the kids didn't betray him. I did. Last month Vance's mother Marlene ran into Nadia at a grocery store. Marlene said, "Tell Sienna the children ask about her." Kate doesn't mention her but the younger two do. Regan drew a picture of the family last week for school. She drew 4 people. Vance. Kate. Jonah. Herself. Sienna wasn't in the picture. A 13-year-old drew her family and left her mother out. Nadia told me this on the phone. She didn't sugarcoat it. She said, "Regan drew the family and you're not in it. I think you need to hear that." I heard it. I've been hearing it at 3 a.m. every night since. In the shelter. On the cot. While the baby sleeps and the fluorescent light flickers. Regan drew a family of 4 and I'm not one of them. That's not punishment. That's accuracy. A 13-year-old drew what she sees every day. A father. 2 brothers. Herself. The mother who visits twice a month with a therapist in the room isn't family. She's a visitor. An appointment. A supervised hour on a calendar. I did that. Not Vance. Not the prenup. Not the DNA test. Me. 17 years of being somewhere else while standing in the same room as my children. And now the room doesn't have me in it anymore. Not because they removed me. Because I was never fully there to begin with. Kate called me once. He's 16. He knows the truth. He said, "You showed up, Mom. But you were always somewhere else." 7 words. The most accurate sentence anyone has ever said about me. Regan and Jonah visit me twice a month. Supervised. At Vance's house. A therapist present. Jonah asked me where I live now. I said, with friends. I lied. Because lying is the only skill I have that never let me down. It's also the only skill that destroyed everything. I'm sitting on this cot right now. 11 p.m. The baby is asleep. The fluorescent light in the bathroom flickers every 45 seconds. I've counted. 2 women are arguing about the TV down the hall. A woman across from me is praying under her breath. The shelter has rules. Lights out at 10:30. No visitors after 8. Meals at 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. If you miss the window, you don't eat. Last week I missed the morning window because the baby was sick and I was cleaning up. I ate crackers from a vending machine for breakfast. 75 cents. From the $12 I had in my wallet. $12. I used to spend $200 on a single grocery run. Organic everything. The good cheese. The fancy crackers Vance liked with his evening wine. I'd hand the cashier a credit card attached to an account that Vance funded with 55-hour weeks and not think about the number for a single second. Now I think about every number. $12 in my wallet. $340,000 in judgments. $0 in my bank account. $2,100 that Perry makes and doesn't share. $128,000 that Vance earned that I spent on a life built on fraud. The county office approved my public assistance last week. Medicaid for the baby. Food stamps. $234 a month. WIC vouchers. The woman processing my application looked at the $340,000 judgment and said, "Any income you earn will be garnished." You understand that? I understand. I understand that the system Vance used to support me for 17 years is now the system that will claw back whatever I managed to earn for the rest of my working life. I traded a $128,000 a year provider for a $234 a month voucher. That's the exchange rate of betrayal. The shelter's social worker, a woman named Keisha, sat me down last week. She said, "Sienna, you need a plan. The shelter allows 90 days. After that, you need to have employment and a housing arrangement. We can help with job placement and transitional housing, but you have to commit to the program." I said, "I'll commit." She said, "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, "Yes." She said, "The intake form says divorced. No family support. But your file has a $340,000 judgment and a prenuptial enforcement. That's not a typical shelter case. What happened?" I told her. All of it. 17 years. The brother. The kids. The DNA tests. The anniversary dinner. The prenup clause on page 11. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "In 6 years of working this shelter, I've heard a lot of stories. Most people end up here because of bad luck. Bad economy. Bad health. You're here because of bad choices. And that's harder to fix because the system that catches bad luck doesn't know what to do with bad character. Bad character. Not bad luck. Bad character. A social worker in a shelter diagnosed me more accurately in one sentence than my therapist has in 6 months. I had heated floors. Egyptian cotton sheets. A walk-in closet. A husband who said whatever you need before I finished asking. 3 children who called me mom in a house that smelled like dinner and clean laundry and the life I was supposed to be grateful for. I traded it for room 614. For Tuesday afternoons. For a man who won't answer his phone. $1.5 million in stolen stability. $340,000 in reimbursement I can't pay. A prenup clause I never read. A cot in a shelter. A baby with no father listed on the certificate. That's the math of 17 years of selfishness. Vance is in the house. Perry is in the wind. My parents changed their number. My kids visit me under supervision. And I'm here. Counting fluorescent flickers. 45 seconds apart. All night. Every night. This is what I earned. Not what happened to me. What I earned.